presented. Have a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Go over the rules just briefly here. This is what this is an opportunity for the public to provide information to the Board of Supervisors as we try to formulate an ordinance to recommend to the Zoning Commission, who would then put together an ordinance based off our input, have a public hearing, recommend an ordinance back to us. We'd have a public hearing, and then we would have to have 3 readings on that. So this is just an opportunity for us to gather information. It's not a question and answer type thing. So you'll be presenting information to the 3 of us to consider as we work towards putting our ordinances together. We ask that this be respectful. If anyone is outlined, you can be asked to leave or to sit down. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak this evening. We'll have a timer. When your 3 minutes is up, we ask that you return to your seat. We have 11 people signed up to speak at this time. We're going to start with people that have not spoke at a previous forum, and then we'll go back to people that have spoken at other forums. Yes, and when you come forward, please come to the podium here to speak. Okay. So that is where we're at. The first person on to speak tonight is Harry Pettit. Harry.
Harry Pettit, Winterset, Iowa. Who are you going to believe? Are you going to believe a doctor that got up and spoke at the Arbor and the Winterset meeting of the bad health effects of the windmills? Or are you going to believe people who says there's no ill effects and are not doctors? Are you going to believe the person in the Arbor meeting that knows of the lowering of the land and home values, a realtor? Or are you going to believe somebody who knows little of the decrease in land values caused by the turbines simply because they are not dealing with land transactions on a day-to-day basis? Are you going to believe and listen to the around 80% that spoke against the turbines in the Earl meeting? Are you going to believe and listen to the around 80% that spoke against the turbines in the Winterset meeting? Do you or do you not believe that majority rules? In the event you do not listen and believe the 80% that is against the windmills, and there's lawsuits, and in my opinion there will be several lawsuits, there should be a resolution or a law passed that states that only the property owners that wants or has them is the ones that is liable for any lawsuits. The landowners is receiving compensation for all the windmills on their property. No way should all the taxpayers in Madison County be held responsible for any damages or any monies involved in lawsuit with the windmills. Lawsuits should only involve and be against the landowners and the supervisors, not every taxpayer in the county. Supervisors could stop all of this before it gets started if they listen to the 80% and vote no on any more windmills. If the supervisors goes ahead with any more windmills, they themselves personally and individually should be held accountable. No supervisor should be allowed to collect any monies or anything else from any of the windmill companies or any company associated with them if they allow more windmills to be constructed. There will be no skirting of the law like putting the farm or whatever in her name, corporation or whatever to collect money or easements or any other subject matter that they can make money on. If this happens, I would surely think a conflict of interest would arise. Supervisors, even after they're out of office, should be held responsible for all the statements mentioned above if supervisors allow the windmill to continue to be put up. Notably, a lot of the windmills and therefore lawsuits will continue after they are out of office. If the county needs more money, they should cut expenses.
All right, thank you, Harry. All right, next I have Leon Phillips. Leon, you can speak into the microphone a little bit better, everyone will be able to hear you better.
That's what I'm going to speak. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Leon Phillips, 2963 Settlers Avenue, Truro, Iowa. I believe we need wind farms, plus solar and water power. A huge amount of power is going to waste at Red Rock and Cedarville. The anti-windmill people are quoting doctors about wind power being bad for people's health. I would like to know how many cases they have treated because of windmills.
Keep your comments to us.
Don't talk to us, not
Talk to us.
Okay. People who live and work around them every day report no problems. People are saying they lower property values. If so, wouldn't their tax go down? I asked in the assessor's office how many people's tax went down around Maxburg wind farm, and he said none. People say wind power is subsidized. It is, but only a small fraction of what fossil fuel gets. The International Monetary Fund assesses global subsidies for fossil fuel as part of their work on climate. They report fossil fuels got $5.2 trillion in 2017. The income from windmills is a big help to farmers who have them. I understand the new deal site and ambulance garage will be paid for with tax from the Maxburg wind farm. Madison County has many places that could use the windmill tax. We need them. I am 84 and worked 40 years at a steel plant and tire plant around a lot of noise, and am not aware of damage to my health from the noise. Thank you.
Thank you, Leon.
Next we have Larry Phillips.
Yes, I'm Larry Phillips from South Truro. I'm in favor of windmills. We're going to lose a whole generation of farmers, young farmers. How many people under 30 years old and maybe even under 40 that know they're farmers? We're going to lose them. It'll be like the 80s. My brother and I went through the 80s. 18% interest. This could happen again. We've got corn that was $8, it's under $4 today. Beans that was $16 are just a little over $8 today. I sold cattle 7 months ago, cows, and I'm sure all you people know or think that hamburgers half what it was 7 months ago. I just sold 20-some cows and a bull. The bull was in 15 pounds for one I sold 7 months ago. He brought half. The cows was bringing 65 and 70 cents a pound. Now they're bringing 40 cents. Farmers can't operate like that. Just like corn and beans. Who's going to farm this kind? Who's going to pick these people? I know my taxes have doubled on one farm in the last 10 years. Because I just looked it up again today. And we can't keep doing that. And that we've got to do something to keep young farmers involved in agriculture. And if they can't make money, they're not going to be in it. And I'm sure none of you people that work in town would take half the money that you made 10 years ago and still be doing it. And my brother and I got all our guys signed up in Madison County to be windmills. I would sign it in Clark County in next week if they would start to put them out. Because I need something to help pay the taxes. I need something to keep the farm going. I'm 70, freaking 78 years old. I'm not going to be farming that much longer. But young people are not going to be able to afford to farm the ground. So, we got to do something to keep young people involved in agriculture. Or it's going to go to corporate, just like the chickens, the hogs, and if you think you've got high price food today, wait till they can go.
Thank you, Larry.
Next,
Next I have Josh Beck.
So I'm Josh Beck. I live north of town, 2977 Dollarview Avenue. Most of it here tonight has a lot of questions, but my points would be just, I understand the older farmers can use the income that they're missing out on. But I think you have several younger generation of people that have hobby farms, just an acreage to enjoy, that their property values will go down. And they want to be here for another 30, 40, 50 years. Where the majority of people that sign up for this, I believe, have the intent that they won't be around much longer and have to deal with the aftermath of the noise, the site, just everything that goes with it. So when I think about windmills, I think about how long will they stick around for? What happens when they're not usable? Do they go to landfill? Are they recyclable? How long are contracts for? Those are all questions that I have that I'm not sure where I will find the answers, but I also, who gains anything from it except for the landowner? Does the community gain anything? As another gentleman had said that, the property tax is going to go down. So if my taxes continue to go up like they always seem to do, and I don't want to live there, I can't imagine anybody else is going to want to live there either. So now I'm in a place where I can't sell it if I want to. So nobody wants to buy a house next to a wind generator. That's really all I have for today.
Thank you, Josh. Next I have Kevin Stewart.
Okay, I'm Kevin Stewart, 2985 18th Street, just a couple miles south of town here. And, first, I'm not opposed to wind energy. However, I am opposed to wind energy when it negatively impacts what I'm doing. And, a little bit about me, I'm an economist by training and an agronomist by trade, so I work with farmers across the state of Iowa. The reason I'm opposed to the wind turbines that will impact my quality of life is, quite frankly, I'm not going anywhere. We're planted. And last thing I want is something, going out that I have to go out and look at every day, or have the red lights at night reflecting in my window all night long, every night long. My taxes have more than doubled since 2002 without making any improvements. Fortunately, I don't live in a big fancy house. If I did, it'd be even more of an issue. Now, I wouldn't have even known about anything going on in this area had the neighbors not stop by and tell me about a monitoring tower that went up just a mile north of my house. Now, it upsets me a little bit that they would be planning stuff in my neighborhood, and nobody from Mid-America had the decency to stop and discuss something that would be impacting me. They'll wait until it's too late for us to do anything about it, and then that's when we find out where they're going in. So does anyone know within the Truro area where they're planning those towers? Do the supervisors know? Exactly.
They've not applied for any permits at this time, so all we're doing is gathering easements.
So if you drive into Maxburg or Stewart at night, would you want to live in the middle of all those blinking lights? If you drive just into Truro, you can see of Maxford lights. Don't impact anything here, but if you're living within a half mile of those lights, I would say it's kind of a mess. Now, would like mine change if, for any sacrifices I made, that my electric bill went away and my property taxes were waived? Might not change my opinion, but certainly ease the pain. I don't hear any discussion whatsoever about that. My electric rates are double that of my son who lives in Des Moines on a per kilowatt hour. Alliant Energy says that is because of the higher cost to serve in the country. But where are they putting the wind turbines? Where they're spiking everyone's rates. Mid-American and Alliant Energy say it's wind energy is necessary to keep rates low. However, each time they ask the utilities board for a rate increase, they cite wind energy investment as one of the reasons why they need a rate increase. And every one of their requests for a rate increase is approved.
Thank you. Next I have Rex Stevenson.
Well, let me state first that I'd be the last person to tell someone that they can or cannot do on their own property. Because I believe in personal property rights. But what I don't understand is how somebody can come in and put up wind generators. An absentee landowner is what I'm talking about. And I'd like to know how many of the ones in Maxford or the money that's for the easements is going to people that don't live there. If somebody wants to have a wind generator on their property, I think they should be required to live within the same distance of that tower as their other neighbors. That should be in the ordinance. And if you're not willing to do that, you should not be allowed to have one. Period. End of talk. That's it. That's the way I feel about it. If somebody wants to pull one up a quarter mile from my house, they should be able to, they should have to live within that quarter mile themselves. It's that simple. You're going to inconvenience me, degrade my quality of life, devalue my property, and I have no recourse to do anything about it. That's just something for everybody to think about.
Thank you, Rex. Next I have Charles DiCarlo, but it's kind of crossed out. Charles?
Charlie DiCarlo lives south of Truro, Ohio Township. Jolene and I moved here over 45 years ago to 20 acres and acreage. Wanted to be in an agricultural community, never pretended to be farmers. Sharecrop, then CRP, our choice, not the government telling us what to do. Our house that we live in, most of it is the former Oak Run schoolhouse, which will tell you the proximity to the road. Over the years, we've had hogs right across the road, cattle right across the road, corn and beans, native prairies, and now we've got sod fields. Oops, what happened to our scenic view? I'm not concerned about that. My concern is the right of the landowner and the use of their land to make a living, not the government telling them what to do. Early in this century, the Winterset needed a lake, so they picked the Clanton Creek area. They used eminent domain. If you don't know what that means, the government takes your land away. Okay, it was supposed to be 400 acres, and then all of a sudden, they wanted to make it 800 acres. And then all of a sudden, they lost the concept it was for water, and the loss of agricultural land was for economic development. Therefore, in order to return our land to agriculture, the right of the landowner, the use of their land, I propose that the townships of Penn, Madison, Jackson, and Douglas be annexed to Adair County. Webster, Lincoln, Grand River, Monroe to Union County. Scott, South, Walnut, and Ohio to Clark County. Jefferson, Lee, Union, and Crawford in the city of West Des Moines and the city of Winterset to West Des Moines. Do I have time left? Okay, if a geographic survey was done and they found 500 years of crude oil sitting right in your front yard. My guess is that in the flash of an eye, there'd be an oil rig there to drill and a derrick to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Okay, next I have Rick Fitch. Rick.
Rick Fitch, my address is 2748 Woodland Avenue. There have been many good points for and against wind turbines. Those people for will gain monetarily. Those against don't want to lose monetarily or aesthetically. I am for a person's right to do anything they want with their land, but you as county supervisors already restrict that landowner's rights if he wants to install hog confinement because it will negatively affect his neighbors. I can see the lights of the Maxburg 400-foot turbines from my house in the evenings, which is on the opposite side of the county. So how far will a 500 or 600-foot wooden turbine affect the neighbors? Last week, Brent Tanharder supplied you with information on safe distances from turbines because of swinging ice, blade failure, etc. There's a paper prepared by the California Wind Energy to figure a danger zone. It is called Permitting Setbacks for Wind Turbines in California and the Blade Throw Hazard. This was prepared in 2005. Another 3 engineers had a paper called Calculating Wind Turbine Setbacks with Science Instead of Politics, dated 2013. If we are putting setbacks in place to protect us, we should find someone who can do the math and make sure that the minimum setbacks to any non-participating border is sufficient. There should be no place on a non-participating landowner's property that he should be made unsafe. I cannot fathom that the county supervisors can designate part of my land unsafe to be on. You will be doing this if you decide the safe distance from a turbine is X amount to the foundation of my home. What about the rest of my land? I want my grandchildren to be safe on all of it, not just inside my home. This safe distance must be from the property lines of all non-participating people. If you as supervisors come up with a safe distance number, which I feel you must, it must apply throughout the county, even Arbor Hills. Why would you be concerned with your setbacks hindering Mid-America's proposed sites? Since we are talking safety of all Madison County residents, shouldn't that be more important than Mid-America losing a couple of turbines because of the new setbacks? These setbacks need to apply to all non-participating land throughout this beautiful county. Are we going to put our citizens and tourists in harm's way? Please promote our health, our safety, and our general welfare. Don't guess or compromise. Hire an expert to use these formulas so that we know what a distance needs to be safe. Then use those numbers on the property line so that we are safe on all of our land. If you really don't want to hire anybody, you can simply ask Mid-America. They've been aware of these figures and distances since this project started. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Next, I have Karen Winkleman.
Karen Winkleman, live just north of St. Charles. My speaking will just be a matter of the heart. We own property in western Adair County. We left the county for a few years, thinking that in the long term we would come back and build another home on the north part of our county. In the meantime, the wind turbines came. In the meantime, my heart went, no, there's no way I can live in amongst these giants that pollute my view, my beautiful countryside. I just got done listening to 35 minutes of the residents of Adair County. Their hearing as to putting a cap on the number of turbines in Adair County. Most of them are heartsick at what the landscape now is. in Adair County. Please, please don't do this to the gorgeous Madison County. The country put in national parks as areas where people could go and not have to endure pieces of modern civilization. Maybe we need to exclude parts of our county if wind turbines are needed in some areas. But let's exclude the parts that are so important for tourism and for matters of the heart, for those who live here, those who come to visit here. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Next, I have Amy Jurgensen.
Hi, I'm Amy Jurgensen. My address is 1684 Upland Trail, Pearl, Iowa, 50229. I live over by Howell Tree Park. And I want to thank you, supervisors, for your public service, for holding these forums, and for your ordinances. My concerns are, I don't believe that comments from 3 open forums accurately represent 11,611 registered voters. The people will never be able to vote on this issue because Iowa doesn't have referendums. I don't believe the proposed ordinances cover every aspect of a decision this large. There's a lawsuit against the supervisors, and I believe there'll be more. This is a very sensitive, heated, and permanent decision. I believe everyone should step back, let emotions settle, and conduct more due diligence. Therefore, I have the following recommendations. Adopt a resolution indicating no ordinances will be adopted during the moratorium. The moratorium will automatically extend until the due diligence process is completed. I recommend forming a wind turbine committee. The committee will consist of 2 representatives from each township, 1 for and 1 against turbines. The committee will hear residents' concerns through 2 open forum meetings in each township, online comments, and surveys. The committee will conduct a county impact assessment, including positive and negative effects to residents' quality of life, emotional and physical health, water, wildlife, buildings, roads, and geology, the attraction and retention of businesses and residents, marketing and tourism, visual pollution, and the financial impact to the community. The results of the assessment will be discussed in 3 open forums. The committee will develop 3 ordinances based upon residents' comments, other ordinances, and the proposed ordinances from our supervisors. 1 ordinance will govern the 51 existing turbines and their future. The 2nd will govern proposed turbines, and the 3rd will recommend no turbines. The ordinances will be discussed in open forum meetings and voted upon through a straw poll for all residents over the age of 18. The supervisors will then adopt ordinances based on the straw poll, committee, and resident comments. Thank you, supervisors, for listening to my concerns, considering my recommendations, and not rushing into any decision. I have a copy of my outline for everyone if they want one.
Thank you, Amy. Next, I have idle ransom. Idle passes. Next, Lauren Cottle.
First of all, I think these monstrosities are an abuse of the taxpayers' funds, both the federal government and now the county. These things are only there because they're subsidized by taxpayer money. Other than that, we wouldn't have them. We wouldn't be putting up with this. They shouldn't be here. And beyond that, I'll never put them on my farm. My farm's leased out to somebody else. I've been informed that if I put them on my farm,
they'll break the lease. I make more money on the lease than I will make on these things. I don't want them, and beyond that, I don't want them in my eyesight. I already have to look at Maxburg. I live on high ground, and Maxburg's blinking all night long. And to me, I've lived in Madison County all my life. I was born here, and these things are ruining, you know, the aesthetics of what we have. They've got to be ruining the land values. I'll never be selling the place, but I don't want my grandkids to have to look at these things either. And they're going to be there forever. And so my vote is, oh, and another thing. You know, we have a lot of bald eagles out here, especially in the winter. When the rivers freeze over, the bald eagles come out here and they're after carrion, whatever they can find. Well, these things are notorious for killing bald eagles, especially. All over the country, especially where there are high populations of bald eagles. They will be the victims of these things. And I think that ought to be considered too. So my vote is absolutely no on this, and it'll never be on my farm.
Thank you, Lauren. Next I have Bill Gibson.
I'm Bill Gibson. I live in the Maxburg wind farm. I'm just here to speak beyond the resident within the wind farm itself. They don't bother me or my family whatsoever. The blinking lights stuff probably bother you people from a long distance way more than they do us that live in the middle of it. As far as the property values and stuff go on my farm, it definitely increased the property value by putting towers on it. You know, so I don't know why someone else's piece of property would be any different than mine. You say it's going to ruin your property value. Why would you want to ruin my property value by not allowing me to put one on? So, you know, and there's historic studies done on the wind, on the birds that it kills. Very few birds are impacted. Your automobiles impact way more birds than a wind tower does. I don't think there's anyone in this room here tonight that is willing to give up their automobile. So, and then the affordable energy that comes from them, everything is subsidized in this country anymore. So you got to just figure out that's what you're going to put up with from now on, is subsidies on everything. So I'm just speaking from someone who lives in amongst the towers. We're all for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next I have Kevin Johnson.
You want me to state my name and address? Sure, I'll take the time to Kevin Johnson. I live at 812 Husky Drive in Winterset, Iowa. And I'd like to thank all the supervisors for allowing us to have this town meeting. Appreciate the time that you put in here. And there's been a lot of comments for and against the wind turbines. And what I want to address is the property values. And I've got a chart here that shows the 2019 and 2018 Iowa land values. And Iowa farmland values rose 2.3% in 2019, despite the severe headwinds in the agricultural economy that many have spoke about, according to the Iowa State University's Land Value Survey. This county-by-county chart lists 2019 values on top and 2018 values on the bottom. Now, we've heard a lot about how the values of our land are going to be going down. In Madison County, basically there's a 2.62% increase in land values from 2018 to 2019, which is better than the state average. In Adair County, there's a 2.42% increase in land values. So I think what we need to do when we're talking about the ordinances and all this information that both sides are promoting is that we look at the facts. And basically, there hasn't been shown that property values in Madison County or Adair County have gone down. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next I have Sally Morris.
My name is Sally Morris, and I live west of Winterset on Highway 92, 1488 State Highway 92. We farm out there west of Winterset. I didn't know about this meeting tonight, so I'm really not prepared at all, but I wanted to express my views. I drive home west every night, and I wish all of you, if you haven't, I wish you'd go on Highway 92 west towards Greenfield and take a look at these wind farms that are out there. You folks have mentioned the Maxburg one, but I get to see the Maxburg one direction, the new Adair one, gigantic one, but to me, the wind turbines are a lot closer together. I think they're putting a lot more per acre. I don't know if that's true, but it sure looks like it to me. And then we look off this direction, and you see the huge project off to the north. And I mean, it's every direction except back east where we are. I think this is very concerning. I don't know how, I really value our environment and our county and our beauty of our county, and I think this is really too bad that we're going to let something like this happen to our county that's going to be permanent. These things will never go away. They may quit running because the subsidies dry up. More than likely that's what's happened, but they will never be removed from our farms. Nobody will be able to get rid of them, and it mars our environment, our beautiful county. And I can't see why we'd want to allow anything like that in our county to begin with. I think Adair must really regret their decision. I can remember when I first saw them when I moved my grandparents' home in Casey, Iowa, near Adair. And I couldn't believe over there in Adair County how many were coming up. And I never dreamed they'd be coming over to our county. I'm just amazed. And I'm amazed that Greenfield and Adair let them into their county. And now they're capping it. They have capped it, the way I read it from their supervisor minutes, to 500. But they're there. They're never going to go away. So I think we need to think about that. Do we want our county to be affected like that forever? We have a beautiful county. Thank you very much, and thanks for listening. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Sally. Next, I have Ronnie Scott.
My name is Ronnie Scott. I live at 1311 190th Street, Earlham. I want to talk about the health and safety. I've read both Aaron and Phil's ordinances, and they mention our health and safety once, and they take backseat to the profit and efficiency of the energy company. Both ordinances read as a how-to instruction guide for the energy company. Diane's ordinance reads as a protection policy for the citizens of Madison County, with setbacks from property lines and addresses low-frequency noise, while Phil and Aaron's setbacks are from dwellings and woefully inadequate. Per your Board of Health's resolution, all setbacks should be 1 1/2 miles from property lines to protect Madison County residents. All three ordinances use an A-weighting scale to measure sound. You must use the C-weighted scale to measure low-frequency noise. DeKalb County in Illinois, their ordinance has sections addressing low-frequency noise using C-weighted scale, a no-shadow flicker clause, like Diane's ordinance, and one for avian habitat study performed by third-party professionals. Doppler radar cannot distinguish between the turbulence within a turbine area and the turbulence from a tornado. Therefore, this prevents rapid response to alert citizens of an incoming storm or tornado. We can all remember last May when a woman in Adair County was tragically killed by a tornado without warning. I don't have to tell you how many turbines are in Adair County. Don't repeat their mistakes here. There have been 0 studies done to prove the safety of wind turbines. This means the energy company has no proof to offer that they are safe. Did the question of safety ever cross your mind? We all care about this planet, and when big energy comes in touting a way to save the planet while making you a little profit, well, that sounds like a win-win. But, as is evident by all the research done by your own citizens, as well as your own Board of Health, this research which you have access to, there's more to the story than what the energy company wants us to know. And yet, you refuse to accept your Board of Health's resolution. They did their job, they took it seriously, and they did it well. They made an unpopular decision because they could not deny the facts from numerous peer-reviewed scientific studies from decades of research from all over the world on the risks of adverse health effects from turbines. The majority of the members of your Board of Health are professionals with a health background. They know how to read and interpret information. Ignoring their recommendation could leave the county and you open to potential liability. I'm asking you to change your ordinance to reflect your own Board of Health's resolution and put the health and safety of your residents first.
Thank you, Ronnie. Next I have Bob Waldron.
I'm Bob Waldron, and I live at 1360 Elmwood Avenue, Earlham, about 4 miles south and west of Earlham. I was thinking the other day about having moved out there on 4 acres in 1986. Beautiful area we live in, the 4 acres I live on. And I could hear the cows, and I could do all the things and see all the aesthetics that I wanted out there. Well, now I find out that I'm going to have 8 or 9 turbines within a mile of my home, maybe 14 within 2 miles of my home. And what a view that's going to be. And then I also know that I look over at Stewart every night and I see red lights flashing like crazy, and I know we had a gentleman talk about those. And it bothers me from the standpoint that it looks like a big army getting ready to come and attack me over here. I don't want them. When I go to Stewart and go to McDonald's, I see those things over there in the daytime, and I just see windmills or turbines everywhere in my little town of Stewart that I've seen many years. I am worried about property value, and I don't know. I'm not into all the figures and everything, but I kind of feel like if I want to sell my property one of these days, which is my investment, who's going to want to buy my place, I think, with turbines all around it? I guess I wouldn't want to either. We are concerned about health issues, noise. I've read things about the noise from the turbines. I have a friend who told me that, yes, there is noise. The studies frighten me somewhat from what I'm hearing. Hey, now about the problems that I'm having in my neighborhood with a couple of my neighbors that are getting angry with each other. One of them wants a turbine, and the other one doesn't. And so now they've had words. And so here we go. It's going to open a Pandora's box here, I'm afraid. I think it's about money. I know that everybody needs money and needs income, and I understand that, but I don't know if the almighty dollar is the answer to this. It's not saving the planet in regard to mine, and I'm into that too. But from a local study, it looked to me like a high percentage of people don't want these things. If this is done, I would like them placed a mile or at least a mile or a mile and a half from my property line so that I don't have it sitting right next door to me here. And at least do that if we're going to do this thing. And I have a problem with a group of elected officials, and I appreciate your work that you folks have done, calling the shots for the rest of us. Our concerns don't seem to count. I feel like a peon here because I can't do anything about this. And I think Iowa falls flat when it doesn't have a referendum where we could actually vote for this thing or against it, either way. And I'm going to close with this, and it's basically that's very simple. A lot of people that I know don't want them, and I'm among them. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, next I have Eric Brandt. Okay. And now we're going to go back to people that have spoken at previous forums. And you spoke at a previous forum according to this list. Right, Stephanie?
Yeah.
You're going to be next, so.
Okay.
Stephanie, floor is yours.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Bowles. I live at 3251 280th Street in St. Charles. While I've heard many compelling arguments to the financial benefits to individual landowners, when it comes to energy production, there's no such thing as a free lunch, unfortunately. We need to be considerate of the impact not only on ourselves, but our impact on our community and our impact as global citizens. As the world begins its large transition towards lower carbon energy sources, politicians were convinced that global warming was imminent. Lobbyists launched campaigns to favor everything that would purportedly reduce carbon dioxide emissions. This was a marketing opportunity that wind energy business needed. It's vital to consider the impacts that are made and be well understood on the impacts of both global, environmental, and the climate impacts prior to allowing wind turbines. The global impacts may not have the impact that we think it is having. Wind power is making a much less bigger contribution to the world economy today than we think, to the point of being trivial. It was actually abandoned as a viable option over 100 years ago to its unreliability. Even put today, wind is a very small percentage in meeting the global energy demand. To a point, research has shown it provides less than 0.46% of global energy consumption. If we look at the environmental impact, two papers published by both the Environmental Research Letters and Jewel, Harvard University researchers find that transition to wind and solar power in the U.S. would require 5 to 20 times more land than previously thought. In addition to resource consumption, the environmental impacts have direct impacts in our environment, killing most birds, bats, etc. In addition, sinking concrete foundations deep into wildlands is bad enough. However, if we look globally, what's out of sight and out of mind is the dirty pollution generated. Take a look at Inner Mongolia, where the mining of rare earth metals for magnets used in turbines. This generates toxic and radioactive waste on an epic scale, which is why the word clean energy is a farce. It gets worse. Wind turbines, apart from their fiberglass blades, are made mostly of steel with concrete bases. They need more than 200 times as much material per unit of capacity as a modern combined cycle glass turbine. Steel is made of coal, or is made with coal, not just to provide the heat for the smelting ore, but to supply the carbon and alloy. Cement is also used using coal. The machinery of clean renewables and the output of the fossil fuel economy largely impacting the coal economy. If we take a look at that, 100 tons of coal can be used per turbine. Now, if you were to build 350,000 more turbines a year, just to keep pace with the increasing energy demand, we will require 500 million tons of coal a year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next I have Ben Johnson.
Dr. Ben Johnson, 1078 200th Street. As a heart specialist at the town meetings, I've listened to the comments made by wind energy that industrial wind turbines are safe. There's absolutely, as we've heard before, no scientific support for that claim. Their experts agree with me. The last two town halls, and the one today, I've heard the comments from the Baxter wind farm residents and farmers that the noise doesn't bother them and they seem safe. One must remember that we don't all respond to safe and noxious stimuli, such as a wind turbine noise. The response rates do increase, however, as the noise gets louder. The main adverse effect is sleep disturbance due to audible and non-audible noise produced by the turbines. As wind noise exposure to 35 dBA, which is a measure of loudness, studies should report that 6% of that population is highly annoyed. By 43 dBA, 45% of the population is highly annoyed. Annoyance and sleep disturbance are both considered adverse health effects by the World Health Organization. The adverse health effects from industrial wind turbines don't produce suddenly recognizable ill and dying people. It takes noise levels high enough to consistently cause sleep disturbance, which then produce physical and mental exhaustion, each with their negative cascade of health impacts. At higher noise levels, say 45 dBA or higher, the possibility of cardiovascular disease begins to rise. This may take decades to develop and is unfelt by the residents. The world's epidemiologic experts and the weight of the evidence supports that statement at extremely high probability levels. I see patients who have long-standing, unrecognized, untreated obstructive sleep apnea, which produces chronic sleep deprivation. They also have developed high blood pressure, varying degrees of heart artery blockages, and other forms of blood vessel disease. Some have had non-fatal heart attacks. Likely some have died prior to being evaluated. Sleep disturbance is often consistently denied by patients. Frequently, they only reluctantly agree to an evaluation. Their families have been silenced. They think it's just a part of getting old, it is ignored and accepted, and in this case, they wouldn't recognize it as possibly due to wind turbine noise. Indeed, significant chronic noise exposure can lead to heart artery narrowing and cholesterol that can lead to heart attacks with even small amounts of plaque buildup, and it is much worse if you have other cardiac risk factors. You need wind turbine noise levels in your house to not exceed 30 dBA in order to maximize your ability to achieve restorative sleep with the windows closed. The Germany mandated level of 35 dBA average will almost reach that. Using 32 dBA as shall not exceed or LMAX outside will better ensure safe sleeping. It will not be possible to achieve optimal resident health safety with the two submitted drafts using 2 megawatt turbines having shorter setbacks. Period. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
If the dBA is, let's say, 55 or 60, can you hear it?
Can you hear 60?
Or does it become...
I think 60 actually is the state limit. I mean, that is very high.
So does that become like a dog whistle? Can it affect us but we can't hear it?
The dBA is a measure of sound pressure level. It's the loudness. Hertz is a measure of the frequency. The lower the hertz, the more infrasonic it is. Typically below 20, we can't hear that. Low frequency noise, 20 to 150 hertz, and above that generally is audible or recognizable sounds. So 35 dBA is allowed, particularly in the audible zone. And again, we want sleep to occur below 30 decibels.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Rosalia Johnson.
Point of order, is this going to become a question-answer session now?
It's only a question and answer if one of us would have a question for a presenter.
Thank you.
I just wanted clarification for Jessica.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what rules were going to be followed.
They were stated at the beginning.
Thank you.
We can ask
Okay.
for clarification.
Rosalia, you are up.
Okay. Thank you, supervisors, for your work to develop ordinances for wind energy and for allowing public input. At the hearing last week, it struck me that you're faced with two separate but related issues with respect to protecting our natural resources. In addition to regulating the development of wind energy, the supervisors also need land use plans for the county. For example, making a decision to allow wind farms in one place precludes residential development in that part of the county. In approving the Maxburg and Arbor Hill wind farms, the county has permitted, in effect, a 500-foot high wall that will preclude Des Moines area urban expansion into the western parts of the county. A wind farm to the south of Winterset would also preclude expansion to the south. But my purpose tonight is to again speak on behalf of protecting natural areas and the animals that use those areas. Many people and organizations throughout our country are involved in the development of what's called the I-35 Flyway, designed to provide a protected multinational transcontinental corridor for birds, insects, and other species to migrate from Canada across the United States to Mexico and points south. Many of the species, including the monarch butterflies, are experiencing rapidly declining numbers. The monarchs and most of our songbirds are highly valued by the public of all ages. Concern about the decline in their numbers has generated heavy public involvement in the establishment of the I-35 Flyway. The flyway includes places for migrating species to rest, find food, and reproduce. The Saylorville Lake Complex provides the major rest stop north of the Des Moines Metro. South of the Des Moines Metro, the flyway crosses the eastern half of Madison County, where numerous rest stops have been created. Those on public lands and land owned by private conservation organizations include Badger Creek, Gentian Marsh, Clanton Creek Recreation Area, Heritage Hill, which extends into Clark County, and Crawford Township Section 10. NRCS and private landowners have invested heavily in plots for migrating monarchs. Wind farm development in the flyway should be prohibited, as setbacks could not adequately protect the migrating species, which are being attracted into the area by the food plots and rest stops. To allow wind development in the flyway would be analogous to creating a speed bump on I-35, which would surely result in massive death and destruction for those using the freeway or the flyway. This could create a massive public relations problem that the county doesn't need.
Thank you. Next up, I have Daryl Johnson.
Harold Johnson, 220 West Washington, Winterset, Iowa. And I appreciate your work here and the task you have. Obviously, whatever decision, we're going to ask about active people. But I guess that's the reason we get those high wages. Having heard that the noise emitted by wind turbines was similar to a jet engine, I decided to get a device and get accurate measurements, and the results are as follows. Took measurements at the Bill Gibson Farm, 3118 Heritage Avenue, with a turbine approximately 1,200 feet away. Outside of the building, it was 44 decibels. Inside the machine shed was 35.1 decibels. About this number that Dr. Johnson said was the limit. Took measurements at 2929 130th Street with the turbine approximately 1,200 feet away. Outside of the car, in other words, outside right near the house, was 39.1 decibels. Inside the car, which would be approximately the same as the house, 33.8 decibels. Took measurements at Montrose Pharmacy at the soda fountain. The decibels were 68.7. Now, that's many times what Dr. Johnson said was safe. Took measurements on McDonald Street in Stewart, Iowa, approximately 1/4 mile north of I-80. Outside the car was 64.4 decibels. Inside the car was 38.2 decibels. Took measurements at the Napa store, right south, 4 miles south of I-80. Outside that car was 59.3 decibels. Inside approximately 34.1. Now, we all know how many thousands of people in the state of Iowa live within a 1/4 mile of the freeway. and we know how many of them have ended up in the hospital. Conclusion that I came up with is that the wind turbine noise is much less than we encounter throughout our normal day's activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Darrell. Next up, I have Nancy Forrest.
Nancy Forrest, 2299 152nd Street, Winterset. I want to thank you again for enacting this moratorium to allow careful consideration of the complexities surrounding commercial alternative energy projects in the county. Your packet contains a portion of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Guide to Best Practices for Wind Energy, a template for creating effective ordinance control of commercial wind products obtained from the Alliance for Wise Energy Decisions, and then a sensitive areas ordinance from Johnson County. My remark focus is going to be on protecting natural resources for ecological health and human quality of life. I'm going to call attention first to a couple of items from Diane's proposed ordinance draft. I'm referring specifically to Roman numeral 3, subset 8. I have the question, who identifies the species of concern? I support including local knowledge as well as state and federal designations. Local because databases are scattershot, often outdated, and incomplete. I would also propose adding private land with conservation easements or farming easements in place or in process. I would add existing native forest, individual existing healthy trees over a certain age, using page 7 from the template. If you would like to look at that, there is more detail there. Included also in that template, item 7, there is mention of something called a view shed. The concept here is to think about what a watershed is and then translate it into a scenic view. I would add also corridors for animal movement to use for food access or acquiring new territory. I would involve or recommend involving the Madison County Conservation Board, NRCS, and citizenry in citizen science work to make IDs of the specific species. IDs should prompt design and adoption of sensitive areas or natural areas ordinances created to protect those areas. Next bullet. I applaud the inclusion in Diane's ordinance subsection 5, letter E, for the 1 mile setback from flyways for federally protected or managed migratory species. Back to Diane again, another bullet, item 3, subset 9, needs more detail. Include public drainage districts, watershed projects, lakes, permanent water courses, underground tiles, hybrid soils with wetland potential, historic springs or fens, ephemeral pools, or exposed limestone habitat.
Thank you, Nancy. Next, I have Mark Statlander.
Excuse me. Mark Statlander, 2574 250th Lane, Winterset, Iowa. I'm for renewable energy sources that are humanly safe, environmentally safe, and fiscally responsible. Because of that reason, I'm recommending that you repeal the Iowa Tax Code 427E.20, which basically allows wind turbines to be taxed a maximum of 30% for their lifetime. All the residents of this county that either own farmland, property, or businesses or homes get taxed at 100% of their assessed value in the second year, and I find that to be fiscally irresponsible. I'm going to use some information that was provided in the Madisonian editorial to financially support what I'm saying. There was an article that talked about the benefit of Mattsburg wind turbines, and it said that in the last 4 years we've received $2.4 million plus in tax revenue from the Mattsburg wind turbines, and that they were helping out financially doing the renovation of the courthouse, the ambulance garage, elderly service building, and the nature center. I think every one of those statements is true. This tax law hadn't been enabled or enacted, we would have received $16.4 million in the last 4 years, and all of those projects could have been paid for in full, and we would not be subsidizing the bottom line of $1 million companies at the expense of the rest of the citizens in our county. Now, a point of clarification, if you would repeal this tax law, Mattsburg's not going to change. We're still going to get the $1,370,000 that was stated in the paper. But what we will do is we'll lose over $38 million in the next 14 years from that project. So I'm suggesting that we get that changed. This particular tax law is not part of the ordinances. It doesn't fall under the moratorium. It can be addressed today. You three have the authority and ability to make that change right away. And I think it would be in the best benefit of all people in our county. And I would suggest that you address that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
I have 2 more things next, sorry.
You got some time?
I have time?
Yeah, 30 seconds.
Okay, this won't stop any wind turbines. And it doesn't preclude the importance of what you guys are doing, addressing the ordinances that need to be put in place in addition to this. So thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Next person I have on the list is Mary Jobs.
Somebody forgot the glasses up here.
Mary Jobs, 1281 Pitzer Road, Earlham. So we have just completed the 3 public forums. Now it's time for a little pop quiz. This is a little true-false quiz, only 10 points. Everybody can participate, but here's my voice, and I'll give you the answers at the end. Here we go. Statement 1, true or false? Wind energy is a high capacity value solution to provide reliable, dependable, dispatchable electricity to the electrical grid to meet our demands for electricity 24/7, 365 that replaces our need for conventional electricity production plants. True or false? 2, true or false? Wind energy is a clean source of energy that meaningfully reduces carbon dioxide and global warming. Statement 3, true or false? Wind-generated electricity will reduce our nation's dependence on oil. Statement 4, true or false? Wind energy is an economically viable on its own and will reduce our local electricity costs. Statement 5, true or false? Wind energy will provide an economic windfall to our county that will not have any offsetting financial impacts. Statement 6, true or false? Living near industrial wind turbines is safe and poses no plausible risk to human health, safety, welfare, domestic animals, wildlife, our aquifer, our communications, our ecosystems, or any other aspects of
there is no evidence that exposure to industrial wind turbines are associated with adverse health effects. Statement 8, true or false? There are no legal or financial risks to landowners for holding wind easements or hosting wind turbines. Statement 9, true or false? Industrial wind energy development in Madison County meets the Rotary International's 4-way test of things we think, say, and do as a moral and ethical standard our public servants should aspire to uphold. And finally, statement 7, true or false? The precautionary principle defines action by policymakers on issues considered to be uncertain when a proposed activity, such as industrial wind development, raises concerns of plausible risk to harm to human health, safety, or the environment. This principle implies that there is a duty of policymakers to protect the public. So, how'd you do, everybody? If you answered false to questions 1 through 9 and true to question 10, congratulations. You just passed Industrial Wind Energy 101. If you didn't answer those correctly, I do have several other copies of this. On the back, I have an answer key with study guide resources. So
Thank you, Mary.
After the meeting, if you'd like a copy.
Okay, that concludes all the people that signed up to speak. Is there anyone else that would be interested in speaking that didn't sign up previously? There was one on here I couldn't quite read. It was kind of on top of another one. All right, please come up.
This will be short. Thank you for your time. I just want to bring forth a few facts. I listened to several of the town hall meetings, and there was quite a bit of information on tourism that was not true. I have served as tourism director in Madison County for a number of years. I've been involved in tourism with the John Wayne Museum and the Madison County Chamber. The last year, in 2019, our Madison County Chamber entertained 18,000 people at the Covered Bridge Festival. There was not one conversation brought into our chamber office about, oh, what a terrible thing to see in Madison, wind turbines. We had 20,000 people come in our office and sign our guest book. And there again, there was no conversation. I called the head of the John Wayne Museum today, and I asked Liz Hanson, I said, how many tourists did you entertain in 2019? Well, we had 30,000 people sign our book. And I realize that not all people sign the book when they come in the chamber office or the John Wayne Museum. I said, did you hear any conversation about the wind turbine ruining the beauty of Madison County? No, I have not. I talked to the head of the scenic byway, and they said, no, it was the opposite. They have put Madison County with some wind turbines on the cover of the magazine that they have just recently issued, and you can see it at the newsstand. So I think the only black eye that we've got is all the news media going on about Madison County and what is wrong with them, turning down wind turbines. And if there's any facts about the health, I'd be concerned too. But do you think Mid-America is going to come in our county and try to make us unhealthy? I don't think they're going to. Maybe we need to look at more facts, and I hope you can find a good agreement that will make everybody happy. It's not an easy job. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenna. Anyone else that would like to speak this evening? I'm going to go ahead and put the list on here, so if you've not signed up, please write down your name and address when you come forward.
a great cane. I actually live a mile west of the Winterset Airport. We farm there, and we also have ground and farm with my folks at Maxburg area. We're not part of the wind area where Gibsons are located, but we're just northwest of that. From my location at Winterset, we're close enough to the airport, I don't think you can put 400-foot towers next to us. We're literally in the fly zone and watch parachuters, which I love. I guess I think two things. One, I also farm, and we on a field of ground, so I walk a ton of acres across the Midwest market. I've lived in several states. One thing I'll say is I'm not against wind energy or the benefits that it could provide. What I do see is what do we do with these next time? So what happens? We have a lot of them up in the county now. Adair County is full of them. I walk crops in Adair area, Adair, Iowa, not the county, and Guthrie up along the interstate system. They're all over the place. Quite frankly, they do make a pretty backdrop for a picture. As I look at that, though, I also take a look and say, okay, the company I work for currently has said, hey, by the way, you also have a setback as of the middle of last summer. You cannot scout directly underneath those because of issues with blades, with issues of fires, with other pieces. What happens to those? And then again, what happens after they're done? I'm not against the ones that are currently up, but I think we need to maintain and put dollars towards that funding versus adding more in the countryside to keep going. I also believe if we add more, we need the setbacks to be considerable. Even a mile and a half away, I watch Adair County out to the west window. We live on a ridge. We're above the Cedar Creek watershed. I watch to the south, we're on a ridge. I can see Maxburg all the way. We're 20 miles from one, we're about 12 and a half to the other, depending on where you look. I can already see those, so if I add more, I've got Des Moines City Lights on my east. They're probably not going east of me because of the development towards the northeast, and we've got a lot of development in our area. How does that happen in the future and where are we at? To me, the money needs to be spent, maintain what we currently have, and go forth from there. And in renewable energy source, I'd love to see it, but we need more pieces on the ground before we make sense out of what we're doing.
Okay. Thank you very much. So a few more hands.
I'm David Morford, 1920 Street, Earl. And I just wanted to share this article with you. This is an article that appeared in moneyandmarkets.com on January 2nd. It's entitled, Warren Buffett Laments SJW Companies. This is the shareholders' money. I'll read parts of it here. Legendary investor and Berkshire Hathaway founder and CEO Warren Buffett said it's high time companies stop acting as moral arbiters, social activists, and SJWs, otherwise known as social justice warriors, and instead focus their efforts on their primary responsibility, making money for their shareholders. This comes alongside the announcement that Berkshire Hathaway is pouring about $30 billion into wind turbines and infrastructure in Iowa. The plan, according to Buffett, is to turn the state into the wind capital of the world, the Saudi Arabia of wind. But the idea of turning Iowa into the wind capital of the world isn't built out of some moral quest against fossil fuels for Buffett to impose his idea of doing good on society. Not at all. For the Oracle of Omaha, it's about doing what is best by his shareholders. This is a quote, we wouldn't do it without the production tax credit we get, Buffett told Financial Times. Later in the article, he says, instead of companies acting as moral arbiters, Buffett says responsibility should fall to government policy. And finally, another section later, the government has to play the part of modifying a market system. So on the back, I kind of concluded some takeaways I get from this article. Warren Buffett is directing Mid-American Energy to do the following. 1, primary responsibility, make money for shareholders. When they use the tagline, obsessively, relentlessly at your service, they're really talking to their shareholders. Their customers benefit also, but the shareholders are the primary focus. They are to exploit the federal tax credit to make more money. Secondly, they are not to be moral arbiters. They accept no responsibility to be fair or to be good neighbors. They do not care about green energy. And third, this is the quote again from Warren Buffett, government policy has to play a part in modifying the market system. So as supervisors, you need to you dot your I's and cross your T's on this ordinance to make sure you remain in control. Be sure to protect the county and the citizens. They will run over you until you tell them to stop. Remember what they did in Adair County.
Thank you, David. Guess got another hand.
Good evening. I didn't come prepared to speak today, but I've enjoyed the conversation and the opportunity to learn more from everybody here, so thank you. I live in St. Charles, 3011 Hickory Ridge Road. I'm an architect, and every day I and the other architects in my firm work hard to figure out how to reduce the energy consumption in existing buildings and new buildings. And I don't know all the nuances of potentially the health risks or how the decibels may affect individuals, but I can tell you that the status quo in terms of how we consume and use energy in this country is not acceptable, and it's got to change. I do recognize that solar energy or wind energy, they are not the complete solution, but they are certainly one part of this. So I would encourage you to certainly consider wind energy, to consider solar. I do believe in an owner's property rights to develop those things, provided those things do not bring harm to their neighbors. I do think that when you look at this in its entirety, from my opinion, the benefits far outweigh any potential compromises. One of the other things I'll just mention, and I realize this is not perhaps the greatest priority, but I look around and I see our county, the conditions of our infrastructure, our buildings, and potentially how those things are being cared for, and I know that the budget, the dollars associated with those is challenging for you every year. The taxes, certainly to try to compensate those, our property taxes increase slightly every year, it seems like. But at the same time, I think that we either need to embrace some things like this and potentially embrace growth, which could help this, which may alleviate future or greater increases in our own property taxes. I certainly think that's worthy of consideration. So in conclusion, I would be certainly in favor of this. I think it has to include safe and reasonable setbacks for us. I think the regulation should be reasonable and not restrictive to the point where they do not make this feasible in any way. And I certainly think that as we think about the decommissioning of these things and as they age out, that needs to be addressed in some fashion. So thank you for your consideration, and I do very much appreciate your service and trying to address a very difficult situation for the county.
Thank you. Last call, anyone want to speak this evening? Okay, if not,
Raise your hand up, Rachel.
I'm Gary Dealer, 3175 Pleasant View Trail. I just have two items that I guess bother me most about the wind turbines, and I think one has been addressed pretty often is as far as the setbacks to homes. And, you know, my land is where I live, and it is my home. And early on, when turbines started coming up, I was on another farmstead in Adair County, and we're standing on his front steps, and you could see a turbine straight away from him. And I asked him how far away that was, and he said, well, it's 1,500 feet exactly. I've measured it. And I thought then, I said, well, I sure wouldn't want one that close to my house, and I sure would want my neighbor to be able to put one that close to my house. And I can control what's on my land, but I can't control that. And I know that some of the proposed through parts of Adair County where this newer development is. It dominates the landscape every direction you look. And I don't think that is something I would like to see in Madison County. And I think by having some generous setbacks, you also kind of break up the possibility of them completely dominating the landscape, and would also provide a lot of benefits to the people in the area instead.
Thank you, Gary. Rachel, go ahead.
Rachel Terhart, 2046 Adair Madison Avenue. I just wanted to say that there's been some of us who've really been following this for quite a while, and the greed and the tactics of Mid-American Energy, Adair County really didn't know what hit them. And there's really no stopping them once the doors cracked open. I've heard an idea come from one of the supervisors that maybe Maxburg just gets to be zoned as our wind development for the county, and I would just propose that idea again. And this is only the beginning. I mean, we got to look further beyond just now and a cluster of turbines or 2 or 3 more. We got to look at what's going to come next. If they get their foot in the door here and they, as I've heard it said, just roll over us, you're talking about us being a conduit from the stuff going on out west all the way up to Des Moines, where they're trying to get this energy out to other states and ship it elsewhere, besides it not even really benefiting Iowans all that much. So you're talking about transmission lines, battery storage type things that may be further down the road with more destructive problems that could follow. And also just to tag on to, I think her name was Amy Jurgensen. Some of her ideas were quite compelling, and there may be wisdom in not rushing into the specific wind ordinance completion at this time. And my reason for that is if we roll back the calendar a little bit to 2018, it became really a top priority for the supervisors to want to update that comprehensive plan and get that process completed. It rolled on into 2019, and now just at the last supervisor meeting, it rolled in as a 2020 priority again. And so what about the wisdom in that? Instead of rushing to get this ordinance done, why not have the comprehensive plan completed and it serve as your guide and your support for the ordinance and other ordinances that might be needed to be revised for the county as well. And then you're not having to go back and make corrections and amendments and stuff like that, kind of in hindsight. So I just wanted to posit that idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Anyone else like an opportunity to speak this evening? Okay, seeing none, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. I have a motion, is there a second? Motion and a second, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you everyone for your participation, I do appreciate that.